Opa! Welcome to Movies Are Life. I'm your host, Nathan Chandler, and today we are celebrating all things Greek with My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which falls at number 22 on the 50 Best Rom-Coms list. I'm excited to welcome in a great friend, a great educator, and more importantly, a great volunteer, Katie Alsup. How are you doing, Katie?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. So, you might have round. I don't know if I quite have everybody, but I've been tapping in into my resources for this podcast to like anybody who's volunteered significant time to the Y. So we had to bring you into the fold. So yeah. So Katie has been a dedicated volunteer to the Y and to my wife's Whitney's programs, and just has unselfishly served for I don't even know how many years. You were doing it longer than when we moved to Oklahoma, right?
Right. I think so. This is my 10th year. Well, it'll be my 11th year as a teacher, and I volunteered about 3 or 4 years before that through college too. So, guess we're coming up on year 14.
Wow. That's crazy.
That is crazy to think about.
Also this summer, I am trying to tap into my resources for all my educator friends. So I'm trying to catch them in the summer before just life gets too crazy for everybody. So
I appreciate that.
Here in Oklahoma, we start school, early to mid August. So I had to get you on before all that started for sure.
Yeah.
So hey, Katie, did you know that the word cinema is Greek for kinema, which means movement, and I'm not making this up, and graph from graphene, which means to write. And so the very rapid exposure of frames is also called kinematography. I bet you didn't know that. Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah. See who the teacher is now.
I was laughing when I was rewatching this because I took a little bit of Latin in middle school, and we did a whole bunch of Latin and Greek root words.
Okay.
And so when he talks about everything being Greek, and I was like, it's true, everything's Greek, but I didn't even think to look up cinema.
For some reason, I remember you could take Greek at Baylor, and I had a lot of friends that did who were religion majors, and I had always heard that it was one of the tougher classes at Baylor.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I can remember how to conjugate the word for, I think it's girl, puella, and that's all I've got. I can conjugate it for you, and that's all I can remember from my middle school. So.
Well, that's much better than me. I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation of the words that I just said, and so, and I'm not going to repeat them because that was my first pass, and I'm just going with it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
When Tula met Ian, she found her man.
I just want to spend a little time with you.
And he found her family.
No one in my family has ever gone out with a non-Greek before.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding is a 2002 romantic comedy film directed by Joel Zwick and written by Nia Vardalos. It follows a young Greek-American woman who falls in love with a non-Greek and struggles to get her family to accept him while she comes to terms with her heritage and cultural identity. The film premiered at the American Film Market on February 22nd, 2002, and was theatrically released in the United States on April 19th, 2002 by IFC Films. It received positive reviews from critics and was a box office success, grossing $368.7 million worldwide against its $5 million budget. So even to this day, and I did a double check just to make sure the internet was up on all the statistics, but this movie is still the highest grossing romantic comedy film of all time, which is nuts.
It is amazing.
It was nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the 75th Academy Awards, and it was nominated for Best Picture, Musical or Comedy, and Best Actress for Dallas at the 60th Golden Globe Awards. The film spawned a franchise which inspired the 2003 sitcom My Big Fat Greek Life and the 2016 sequel My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2, And I don't know if you know this, Katie, but a third film is coming out this
third one.
September.
Yeah.
This September. And it's titled My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, getting super innovative on the titles there.
Why mess with a good thing, right?
Right.
It's the same family.
Yeah. So before I go into my background with this movie, tell me a little bit about your relationship to this film.
I'm going to age myself or not age myself here a little bit, but I was a solid 11 years old when it was released in the theater. And I'm like 98% sure. I remember seeing it on a giant screen for the first time. So I'm sure we went and saw it as a family. I don't know if it was like Easter or it was just summertime. And so we, wanted to beat the heat. So we got out to see it. But I remember seeing it, and I remember just falling in love, like feeling an instant connection to it. I'm not quite sure why. I have thoughts on it now as an adult that I've gone back and watched it a few times. But when I was 11, I don't know that I quite knew why I felt like I was Tula, or I had that connection with her. But we bought it on every imaginable format, in every imaginable format, and continue to just watch it all the time. It's one of those where if it's on TV, someone in our family watches, puts it on and texting each other, hey, guess what? My Big Fat Greek Wedding's on. And then we go find it. And it's something that we come back to time and time again. So I know I've given you a lot of crap about not getting me on this podcast yet. And I thought maybe there's a reason. And I think this is the reason. I think I was meant to talk about My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, well, there you go. And you weren't giving me crap. I think apparently you were giving Whitney crap, but
there you go.
But I was able to trace. I said, no, I texted her a long time ago, and it was true. So, but to maybe your credit, I probably texted you during the school year. So, there you go. So I was trying, this movie for sure, like after its theatrical release, I mean, it is, we don't have cable, nor do we just keep TNT on, but I just kind of imagine this as like a TBS movie or a TNT movie.
Definitely TBS. Definitely.
Yeah, that was on like on TV like all the time. But and I might be misremembering, but I feel like I saw this in the theater as well. This at that time, this was a movie you just couldn't escape. I mean, the fact that it's still the highest grossing romantic comedy film of all time is but I was a little confused almost when it came out, because I remember seeing it with my family, and then I would have in 2002 I was at Baylor, so it had to be the summer or sometime when I saw it. And so I think it was one of those movies that just had legs. Like
it lasted. I think it lasted in the theaters more than anyone thought it would, like longer than anyone thought it would.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the appeal to this film is I would say very similar to the movie we just covered, While You Were Sleeping, even though very two different films. I think because it's PG and more kind of familiar, like a family bent to it, I think it made it more approachable. So it was kind of that movie that if somebody went and saw it, they after they saw it wanted to bring their friends to see it and that sort of thing. So it was a very small film, independent film. Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson, they helped produce it and kind of got it off the ground. And I think it was based on she originally wrote it. It was like a stage play of sorts, and they thought it would make for a good movie. So so there you go. Did you watch the TV series at all?
I did not.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people did, because it only lasted for 7 episodes. And I actually haven't seen the sequel.
We watched it just the other night. We watched it because we thought, well, I got to know what happens next. There's a sequel all these years later. It was cute. I don't think it's had the lasting power of the first one, but still, cute family fun. But
okay. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're pretty close to this movie, and I don't want to like dog on this movie too much, because
you can say whatever you want.
Well, it's a very entertaining movie, but as I've collectively watched all these romantic comedies, yes, the romance clearly is the catalyst for everything that happens in this movie. The tension between her family, becoming more of an independent woman, And, you know, obviously, I mean, wedding is in the title. There's a wedding aspect of it. And I actually think
for 25 minutes, it's only
yes,
25 minutes of the film.
but I think the like romantic relationship is actually like kind of the like thing that works the least in this movie. But this movie succeeds because it has very memorable scenes, very funny scenes. But when you look at the movie as a whole, like kind of take a step back as far as the plot mechanics go, I think it's a very weak film. Is that a fair criticism?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it leaves there's a lot of loose ends, if that makes sense. There's not like there's some things left dangling where you're like, wait, where is that going? Or why is that talked about? Or, you know, they talk about all these characters that you never really meet. And so you're like, it doesn't seem complete, if that makes sense.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes. But I don't want to take away that it does truly have some very funny scenes. And that's what I think people remember, because it had been quite a while since I saw this movie. And I distinctively remembered key moments and key scenes. Hallie watched this one with me, so kind of during it, I was just like, oh, okay, hey, this is one of my favorite parts, and that kind of thing. So, you know, I do think that movie has that kind of magic to it in that moment. Like, oh, some dialogue type of things they just nail. But as far as the two main characters here, Tula and Ian. And I'm a big fan of John Corbett. I can't say I've seen Nia Vardalos and a lot of other things, but and I don't think they're bad in this movie. But it's clearly it's one of the rare romantic comedies where their relationship is actually almost like a MacGuffin for just letting all the other supporting characters shine.
Right. It's like here's this one event that we can bring all these people in. to center around. But no, I thought it was, and I think this, spoiler alert, I think the second movie kind of does the same thing, where it's like there's not quite that chemistry there that you usually get from rom-coms like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, or
Yeah. Even though I haven't seen the second one, I can imagine it's more like, oh, here's the dad with Windex, and oh, look, it's her Aunt Viola, and she says something crazy. Am I off right there? Am I off in that assumption?
No, it's all the same,
Yeah.
But like I said, cute, but not super strong.
Right. But I'm not. It sounds like I'm completely dogging this movie. I'm not, because it's a very pleasant watch, and it completely makes sense why it's become adored, and now they're basically dipping back into the well, producing this third movie. It's just because I think the characters are so lovable, and there is a sweetness to the core of everything.
Yeah, I feel like it's wholesome is the word that I like.
That's a good word. Yeah.
Reach to when I think about it is like the male cast members, or the male characters are supportive of the female. I think back of when they're in the church and Ian's getting baptized, and her brother leans over to her and says something about like, this is awesome or something. And she says, I keep waiting for him to look at me and say, oh, you're not worth it. And her brother just sincerely and genuinely says, but you are, like there's not that like sibling like rivalry, or there's not like those little digs that they make at each other that you might see in some others, that makes it very, very wholesome, very family friendly, very, it fills your heart, which is why I think it's something that people, and myself included, go back to time and time again.
Yeah, you can tell that everybody loves and cares for each other, and it's even a movie that, like, I guess you could say that some tension lies in whether or not they're going to accept him. But I mean, all romantic comedies, you're pretty fairly certain of what the outcome will be. But, there's no point in this movie where there's any sort of stress at all. And I think that's another reason why people like this movie, so yeah. I think, and this is one thing I'm not entirely certain of, but I feel like definitely kind of getting this behind the scenes look of this Greek culture was something new, and I think people were attracted to that as well. I mean, throughout film, I mean, a lot of different cultures are explored. For some reason, like the Italian culture, I mean, we've seen that tons of movies, whether it be like gangster movie and things like that. So I do feel like that was an element to this film that really shined through. And I think it's probably, I mean, now it's a lot easier, I think, to find like a Mediterranean restaurant and stuff. But I can't help but imagine that when this movie came out in 2002, that it wasn't something as commonly known. Makes sense?
Yeah. I don't know how long the Zorbas in OKC has been around. I can remember it back when I was a kid, but I don't. I can come up with 5 or 6 now at this point where you would go get Greek food, or Mediterranean food, but I don't know what it was back then. I don't remember, being exposed to that much in 2002.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but my family, my mom's side, we basically come from a Lebanese heritage culture type of thing. And so if you look at definitely some of my uncles for sure and my grandmother, you can like completely see it. So so not exactly, Lebanon is not, Greece, but there is, and I've never been connected to my original ancestors like everybody is in this movie, but we had like traditional Lebanese food at a lot of our Christmas gatherings and that sort of thing. So like when they serve Ian's parents, like the baklava and that sort of thing, that type of food I actually grew up around, and that's that sort of thing. And I remember it used to seem like, and my parents still when they would come visit me in Dallas used to be the like only place where my mom could find certain ingredients for things.
Bigger city.
Yeah, bigger city. But I do think now it's actually pretty common. Like you could probably find a market here in the Oklahoma City area, and they live in Arkansas now, and that sort of thing. And so at this time, I think that was another appeal of this. It was just seeing this culture and how it operates.
Right. Yeah. It's fun to see it, right? How they all are connected to each other. And, there's that. I still just giggle whenever they pan across the neighborhood and suddenly it's all the Greek gods and goddesses and statues in their driveway. And you're like, yep, I know where they're from. So that was interesting. But, good for them for being proud of their heritage. And
I know. And it's kind of it's infectious of like how in touch they are, with their culture and how much they love it, because I think that's something that's, and I'm at fault at this and my own is like, really not truly understanding like where I come from. And, this family just has a complete understanding of who they are and, in their eyes, what their purpose is in this world.
Yeah, well, to make Greek babies.
To make Greek babies. Yeah. So is what are some of the performances that you connected with or didn't connect with in this movie?
Oh my gosh. Well, the aunt is a standout, right?
Oh, of course.
She's fantastic. She's so good at everything she does. And, I think we'll talk about it later, I'm sure, but the different quotes, how many of them just come from her alone?
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And then so she's great. And then I love the mom, of course. And what she does, and being the person that holds the family together and makes the family move along in not only throughout the movie, like scene by scene move along, but also she helps them progress to see that this American man isn't terrible for everyone. It'll be okay,
Yes. Yeah.
And then, I mean, come on, Joey Fatone back in 2002 being in a movie. What?
I mean, that was, and honestly, I mean, he obviously doesn't play a huge role in this movie, but I think he does a very good job for what he does in this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The way that he and the brother play off of each other to mess with Ian is like beautiful. It's hilarious. and they do it so well together. You can just tell that they're like just kind of two buddies, like goofing around.
Right. Yeah. I was looking into just kind of diving into some of these actors and their careers, and the parents and the aunt that we talked about, they have a rich acting history. Like they had done tons of stuff before
Mhm.
this movie, like even like TV stuff, like in the early '60s and stuff. And so I think that really comes through in this
Mhm.
movie. They do have a gravitas to them that I think really carries the movie
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. One thing, and honestly, the I think the dad character is very good. Like, and a lot of
Mhm.
people probably remember him the most from this, especially his love for Windex.
Right.
But I don't know. It's still now, and it's not. It's probably a little almost. I hate to say trendy that it's easy to say this, but even back in the day, that whole man head of the household thing and how stubborn that type of person has always like just infuriated me. I don't know why.
I just
Infuriated
I
might be too strong of a word, but
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, I just giggle at it because I grew up in a family where gender norms weren't really a thing. Like my dad worked a lot of nights because he was a pharmacist, and so he would, be the homeroom mom. He would show up to the school field trips. He would be the one that would make dinner for us and do laundry. My mom did all of those things, and she cooked and she put stuff together. But it was just easier for him to do those things during the week, and so it just like made me laugh. Where I was like, "The man is the head. What?"
Yeah. I guess mentally I've always almost equated it, not even the gender aspect of it, but almost more of like a laziness fact. To me, head of the household almost equates to laziness. Like if you're hungry, go make yourself a sandwich. Like if like to me, it's more of the independence of it all that really bothers me. And yeah, it's just kind of like, and of course you're always there to support your family, but like you mentioned, like with what your dad did, it's just like when you're needed, like that's when you
What you
step
do?
up. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. So, yeah. Also, I have to talk a little bit about. I guess you go to college and you get inspired to do a makeover.
Yeah, that's what happens, right? There's always gonna be a makeover montage. Every girl's gotta have her makeover.
Yeah. But they really, not that they necessarily had to give a lot of screen time to this thing, but she's like in that college that one day, and then she decides to sit with those table of girls, and then she's like a completely different person all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, I'm gonna be the person I never was for the last 30 years of my life. Who was I?
Thank you, strangers. Thank you, strangers that we don't ever see in the movie again.
Like, yeah, did any of those become her friends? Was she in class with any of them, or did she just like meet them in the cafeteria and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna sit
Yeah,
with you today"? What
yeah.
happened?
Yeah. And I'll give them credit. They were very nice to let her sit with her. But it was like an exuberant yes that this person I don't think would give. It wasn't just one person like, yeah, sit. Like the whole table was like, yeah, sit with us.
They were like cheering about it. They're like,
Yeah.
we got a friend. Our
Yeah.
table's full now.
Yeah. The brother storyline to me, I did like the moment that you talked about. I liked their little dialogue where you saw their connection, but the whole like him wanting to be an artist thing was just like to me was really really lame.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, again, one of those things where it's like, what is going on? Like, it's never quite handled in a way that like would give it any meaningful
Yeah.
place in
Yeah.
the movie. It's just, I don't know. He
Yeah.
just makes funny faces on the menus, and then he's gonna be an artist now.
Yeah, and I get how like her pursuits kind of awakens something like new in him as well, and that's something I think maybe people who grew up with a family that did have a family business, there's that tension there of hey, I'm setting this up so that you can run it one day and that type of thing, and I can imagine it's pretty difficult if you're wanting to escape that world, especially like in a family culture like this one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Did you all was there ever like a big family business in your family?
I mean, no, my dad's a pharmacist. My grandpa was a pharmacist, but he was down in Ardmore, and so my dad moved up to Norman to go to pharmacy school at OU, and he just kind of stayed here. So he didn't. I don't know. There was never really anything specific to do it. My other grandfather was an engineer, and my grandma was what she called a professional volunteer, and so there wasn't anything that really drove us to do anything. It was my parents were more like go find something that makes you happy, and if it makes you money, good for that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So my grandfather, he owned a small general store in Joinerville, Texas, which is a small town in East Texas. And so my mom and her brothers, they grew up like helping out with that general store, and it was like right next door to their house. And we have a very talented artist in our family, and somebody they basically I can't remember if it was my aunt or my dad, but there's one photograph of the general store, and they drew a picture of it, and like one Christmas handed it out to everybody. And if I could go back in time, I would love just see it, because it's just that one picture, that exists, but just to see like all my aunts and uncles, like when they were little, and just to see that whole dynamic and the fact that it was next door and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, but I don't know when he decided that. Obviously, I don't think any of his sons like took over that business, so I don't really know what happened there. But that would be really neat to go back in time and see.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so my grandfather's drugstore is called Alsup Drug in Ardmore, and
okay.
He did have like a little soda fountain in it back in the day, and so my dad would, make chocolate milkshakes and malts and stuff. And so I pictured that, like he would do that when we were growing up, where he would make us chocolate malts one night or something like that, and get back to his roots. But yeah, I do think it would be fun to see the dynamics of all of them, his brother and sister and him working in the store with my grandpa.
Yeah, that would be very. Maybe if somebody could come up with some kind of device.
Something.
Yeah. As I mentioned, a big strength of this movie are the scenes and some of the quotes and stuff like that. What are some of your favorite moments?
Well, for sure, my family and we quote this to each other a lot. We talk about, the aunt when she's talking about her babopsy.
So I go to the doctor, and he did the babopsy. And inside the lump, he found teeth and a spinal column. Yes, inside the lump was my twin.
So we talk about, going to the doctor and our babopsy, or like, if we don't know what we want for dinner and we're kind of bouncing around what we're doing, or, what we're going, and we can't decide and it gets a little too tense, someone will say, you know what, it's all right, I'll make lamb.
It's just, yeah. Ian is a vegetarian. He doesn't eat meat.
He don't eat no meat?
No, he doesn't eat meat.
What do you mean he don't eat no meat? Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I make lamb.
Like, just something that lightens the mood. But I think, yeah, those two are big ones that stand out to me. But of course, the man being the head of the family and the woman being the mech is something that we joke about a lot. Gosh, there's so many good. I'm trying to think now. I'm like, oh gosh, where did they all go?
Oh yeah, well no, yeah, those are great. Those were some of the ones I had written down. Yeah, definitely. When she's
it's a bundt. You gotta say it's a what? Oh, it's a cake. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely had the bundt cake moment was really funny. That was actually something that garnered a pretty good chuckle out of Hallie. Yeah, definitely the lump, that whole scene, and that's almost like, I think this movie, there's almost like a darker side of this movie I wish that would come out, because that's a very dark joke.
Dark story,
yeah, yes. And it's probably one things that like people remember most about this movie. But yeah, that scene is amazing. And then I also just the whole spitting on everybody is very memorable as well. And honestly, even though as a whole, I don't think the travel store scene where Ian comes to Tula's work, but the headset gag when she like basically chokes herself. I mean, some good physical comedy there. So yeah, yeah, like I said, you mentioned it as well when he talks about being a vegetarian.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's
so good.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, if anything, people can always relate to no matter his culture, Greek culture. I mean, that's obviously a big divide, but I think anybody can relate to just meeting a family that you don't know and trying to win their affection.
Yeah. Well, so I, started dating my now, I guess, significant other partner, boyfriend, whatever you want to call him, about 2 years ago, and we watched this together, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's our families." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And so that's like my new connection with this film is like, "Oh, my family is like this big, loud, always in each other. We're not like giant people wise, but like big personalities, always in each other's business, always wanting to hang out and do stuff together, kind of thing." And he comes from a family that's like pretty reserved, and so it just was like, "Oh my gosh, it is us. This makes so much more sense now."
Movie musings.
You kind of took away some steam from it because that was one of the
Oh,
questions.
you were gonna say that too.
Well,
Oh,
for my movie musings question, and we could talk about it a little bit. I know a little bit that just because Whitney's told me, and I've seen them from a distance that you have a big family, but like, yeah, how like do you have lots of cousins? Do you like how? Yeah.
I'm telling you, not like numbers wise, we're not giant, but we just seem to like fill up a room whenever we're in it. My mom was in a sorority in college, and so she has some sorority sisters that we call aunts. She played softball growing up, and she coached softball, and so we have some softball people that we know, and so it's just a church family, just all of these adopted family members that just I don't have just come into our circle that over the years that it's Aunt Barb and Aunt Cheryl are at every birthday no matter what, and guess what, Aunt Barb's gonna bring Nolanda along because they're together, that's family, and so we just and then Nolanda's kids come, and it's like everybody just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and so not blood relations. And our family, the cousins that we're really close to live in Colorado, and so we'll go see them every now and then, but they, my parents were really part of small families, one brother and then a brother and a sister for my dad. And so it's not number wise that we have a bunch of people necessarily, but it's all these people that my parents have brought into our family over the years that make us big and in everybody's business all the time, and very supportive and very kind and would do anything for anyone, but
Yeah. Well, that another aspect of this movie I do like, and kind of verging on that, like with the family, but even if somebody's been part of a wedding somehow, and I think anybody can relate, not even a wedding so much, but anything that's of your own and other people trying to start putting their hands in it. And I think this movie does a really good job with that, as far as like them, making the wedding invitations and the dress and
the
all.
dresses.
Yeah.
When that happened, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I would be so mad, so mortified." I mean, they do it all out of love, right? They're like, "This is who we are. This is what we do." But at the end of the day, you're like, "Wait, what? Me? What about me? What about the bride? What about the groom?"
Yeah, very much. Yeah, and once again, another little scene that they get right, but just the misspelling of his mother, Ian's mother's name, Harry.
Harry. I loved at the end when they go to dance that her dad says, "Come on, Harry." Like they just accept. It's like, oh, they did see it. They did see it.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about it a little bit, but do you enjoy like Greek food, Mediterranean food? Do you have an eclectic taste?
I do like it. spanakopita is a big one that my youngest sister is pretty gifted in the kitchen, and she's taught herself how to make a whole bunch of stuff, and spanakopita is one of those things that she's like, I'm going to teach myself how to make. So she did make that. I like baklava. Mine and Tyler's first date was at a couscous restaurant, so we had some Mediterranean food on the first date, but I don't eat it as much as I'd like to. But there's a shawarma place up the street from us that we really like, that we'll go to, that is probably every other month or so, that's really good. And so I'm learning to expand my palate past gyros, gyros, euros, however you say it, and move into the realm of falafel and shawarma and oh gosh, there's this like stew that they make. I can't remember what it is called, but it's delicious.
Okay.
It's very like thick and hearty, and I like it's in those dark February days, it's really good to go get some.
I'm a little surprised that my family hasn't kicked me out yet, because I never really had the taste for all the food that they cooked, because a lot of it would involve olives. They would make this, it's almost kind of like a yogurt type of soup. It's called Lebanon, which I just couldn't and never cared for at all. but my grandmother and my mom, and I know my sister has as well, they've cooked Syrian bread by scratch, and it's like terrific. I mean, it's pita-esque, I would say.
Right.
And, and another dish that they my mom used to make a lot, it's called kibbe, and it's probably just left better to Google it and see what it is. But it's kind of like a ground meat type of, but it also kind of has a mint type of taste like to it or whatever. But so I would, instead of getting all the fixings, I would usually take the kibbe and the Syrian bread, and that was was my meal.
That's me. That's me. Yeah. Sorry, growing up, I think they still do it. I can't remember what it's the St. Elijah Greek festival in Oklahoma City. It's a big church that they do, and we used to go to that every year, and I would hate it growing up. I hated it. I was like, I do not want to go to this place. I do not want to eat this food. This is not what I like. And then as I got older, I developed a deeper appreciation for it, but it took some time. It
definitely does. So a big thing that this movie kind of hits on is the religious aspect, and especially the religious ceremony of a Greek wedding. Are you very religious? Like, do you ultimately want a church wedding? Or I was just wondering about that.
That's a little bit of a controversial topic, actually. Only because we attend the same church that my mom attended growing up, and that her parents went to. And so my dad and my mom were married in that church, and there's a lot of people who remember my grandparents, and a lot of people who were there watching us all grow up and stuff. And so I think it's kind of expected, like when Tyler made the family Christmas card last year, and suddenly there were all kinds of questions to my parents the next week at church about when they're going to get married. And the wedding coordinator was like, well, she just needs to call me so we can set it up. But, but my older sister is an ordained minister in the Presbyterian church. While I would love to have her involved, I think she'd get a little too emotional with it. She said this. She knows this. This is not a secret to her. It's one of those where it's like, I don't quite know what we would want. I've always kind of thought like an outdoor kind of thing would be fun, depending on the time of the year. But then also I thought more and more recently, I'm like, what if we just eloped and then had a giant party when we got back?
He was a recent guest, but Robin Kreisman, who I used to work for, their family, they actually practice Greek Orthodoxy. And so it was always a little unusual, because we'd be working and their priest would always come all the time. And he had the long robe on, and he had the big cross on, and, but it was very as I learned about it from him, very, very interesting. And there's some aspects of this in the wedding, that they would talk about. Like, I mean, like when Easter comes around, I mean, it's like a celebration. Like, it's not just it's just not just going to the service and leaving. Like, it's a like almost like an all night party type of thing. There's a lot of aspects that are really cool, but all of that to also say, you're like, I'm glad that works for you. I don't know if that would quite
I don't know
work
that
for me.
it's quite me. Yeah. Something that Presbyterians, we get called the frozen chosen, and there's a reason I identify with that, because I'm like, I'll stand up for the hymns. I don't need to do too much else. Thank you.
Rom-com rankings.
The first category is the romantic chemistry between the leads. So what do you give Tua and Ian here?
Oh, I think I want it more than they do sometimes, if that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, they did it. They got together. So it's definitely one of those where I think I love it. And so I'm like, I'm at a solid 3.5, hearts, because like I want it to be great, but it doesn't always quite work out.
Yeah, I give the relationship 2 hearts, and I'm actually being pretty generous there. And once again, it just doesn't. It's not that they're like necessarily bad together. It just I just don't ever like feel the sparks there very much, and I very much feel like Nia Vardalos, who plays Tula, she wrote this movie, so this is obviously very close to her. And you feel that in this movie, but this very much felt like, okay, here's your movie. We're gonna fill it on this. What's a name that we can just put in here that people would recognize, And I think that's John Corbett, and I think that was paid attention to more so than who would actually click with her.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I love John Corbett. I love what he's done. He's been in some recent stuff. Recent little rom-coms as the dad that are just absolutely adorable, but it just I don't know, she was married at the time. I wondered what her husband would have done with the part.
Yeah. So the second category is the best friend aspect. So usually there's someone who's kind of the voice of reason, and this one's a little hard for me. I know you could probably argue maybe her family is like everybody. Maybe the brother. Did you see somebody that fit into this category?
No, I really didn't. Like the best friend. Yeah, you're right. There usually is someone that's the quirky sidekick best friend that like makes it all make sense in the end. But there isn't really someone in this who does that. And so I don't know. That's what I thought. I was like, is this the mom because she offers the advice? Is this the aunt because she, encourages her to be herself and do what she needs to do? I think they try to paint it as the brother in some parts, and then I think they actually try to paint it as the cousins in some parts, like all of her big cousins that they have and how much fun they all have together and doing different stuff. But I didn't find a best friend really in this one, which I think, I don't know, maybe that plays into the depth of it all, how there's not necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ian, he has his best friend. I can't find the actor's name right now. I've actually seen him in a lot of things, but he's kind of there a little bit, but he's more so kind of like another stand-in for like, who is this family, type of thing. And so I mean, if you're okay, I was okay kind of giving this like a, basically NA, not available. Like
a nail. Yeah.
So and we'll get to the end of this. But that's what kind of makes this movie a little unusual to me, being on this rom-com list. But you probably didn't. But do you happen to listen to the soundtrack to this movie?
I did not. No, I did not. I did not
Okay.
really even like. I thought throughout, and then I like listened to some of the credits, and I was like, "What is the soundtrack to this movie? What is this?"
Well, as you can imagine, if you like Greek music, I think you would very much like this soundtrack. I always kind of laugh to myself for like when I start listening to these soundtracks, because they have varied greatly. And so I happened to listen to this one while doing yard work, and I just kind of laughed to myself going like, people wondered if what I was listening to right now. I think this would be the last thing that they would come up with.
The truth.
Yeah, the majority of it are these Greek songs, and there's a score by Alexander Janko that I thought actually was quite lovely. I ended up giving the soundtrack 3 hearts because, like I said, it's not bad, but it's also something you can imagine playing in a Greek restaurant, which is not bad for this movie because this movie is about Greek life, So, but it's just like something I'm gonna like turn on to listen to, and personally for me, nah, probably not, but yeah.
That'd be funny. Just like walk in. I'm just like imagining like the transition songs of the different scenes, and that's what the soundtrack is made up of.
Yeah. Do you feel like you can give a fair rating to the soundtrack?
I don't. No, I don't think I can. Okay. I mean, based on, like I said, those transition songs that I can't even come up with it off the top of my head. I would love to sing to you, but I don't. No, probably not.
I will say it's worth seeking out. It may have played during the end credits. We watched this on HBO Max, and it's like as soon as they walk from their house and you realize they're their neighbors to their own family or whatever, like it quickly like popped off, like up next, like how streaming services do that. And I was trying to click back on it, then I couldn't, and I was like, but it's worth checking out the song. I think it played in the final credits, All My Only Dreams, which it's by the Greek Wedding Band, and John, I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name, but all I can imagine is he's probably a famous Greek singer that has translated one of his famous songs to a English speaking song. But anyway, I think people should check it out. There's something unusually catchy about it. So, okay, so the fourth category, once again, this movie is just an enigma, and maybe that's why it made so much money. It's the chase scene or declaration of love. So you usually find these in the end of these movies, and I had mentioned earlier, like once again, there's really not a lot of tension in this movie.
Yeah,
they clearly, as what he proposes to her and all that. But I don't want to cut you off from your ranking if you had one, but I had another NA on this one.
No, I mean, if we're just going off of, the stereotypical in every rom-com chase scene declaration of love, it doesn't exist. It's like this very quiet kind of love story as far as rom-coms go. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So the last one, and most importantly, is the rewatchability factor of this movie. I can imagine it might be a little higher for you, given your background, but what would you give it?
Oh, I'm going to give it 4.5 hearts.
Okay, nice.
4.5.
And so, and that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like the enigma of this. I gave it 3.5. Once again, I think that's more of a personal thing for this, but like, it's almost like one of those, like, I'd almost like it more like Googling, like going on YouTube and finding scenes, than maybe like sitting down. But I will say, if this is a movie that was just on, you walked in, and it's like on in your hotel room or whatever like that, you're going to probably sit down and watch it for sure.
Yeah. It's definitely one where like you can put it on in the background as well and pop in and out of it. Because again, like you said, there's just so many good scenes in there. But yeah, there are times where I'm like, I just think to myself, I want something that'll make me feel good. I want something that's easy to watch, and this is one of those movies that's easy to watch.
Yeah, it's very easy to watch, and so like if somebody hasn't seen this movie, I would recommend them seeing it, just because it's kind of like, it almost feels like one of those like staples you should see. But also, I can see maybe somebody watching it now going, okay, that was fun, but like I don't quite see what the big deal is.
It was different in 2002.
It was. The fact that this movie's screenplay got nominated for an Academy Award blows my mind.
I did not know that about it. I mean, do you think like the Tom Hanks of it all carries some weight
for sure?
It?
Oh yeah, for sure. When it came out, it was a thing. Like it definitely was. I'm sure I might be wrong. I'm just kind of guessing, but I'm sure like people started like trying to get Mediterranean food at their weddings. Like this was that type of movie. Like it definitely like changed like aspect of things. I wouldn't be surprised like if the Oscars, if they had like Greek jokes like in the ceremony or something like that.
Yeah.
I
That
mean,
opening monologue.
yeah, this movie really did take Hollywood by storm. And that was one thing I always liked about it, because I knew the independent nature of it. And it was really always a pretty cool story that like Nia Vardalos, she was really struggling, and I think that's also another thing that's unique, that like, I mean, she's certainly not old in this movie, but she's definitely not a spring chick, and just it's fun to see this romantic comedy with kind of older people in it. And so I always liked the background of the story, because she was a struggling artist for a long time, and that this film became, I mean, I know there's been spinoffs to it, but surely she was like set for life after this movie.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I mean it still works, right? It still works. She's still getting some residuals from it. I mean, she has to, because people are still watching it.
Recommendations.
When you're not watching this movie with your family, is there any other thing that you're watching or maybe listening to or reading that you'd like to recommend?
Well, so I did think about this, and this isn't something that I like am watching currently. It's something that I watched at the beginning of the summer and just kind of was glued to. It's actually a German series, and it's on Netflix. It's called Dark. It's kind of
I've heard about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you like Stranger Things, you'll kind of like it. But it's one of those where there's some big questions about the universe in there that are asked. And so, I think I started watching it and just on a whim, and it stuck with me I watched it, like, I think there's like 3 seasons of it, and I think I watched it all in like 2.5 days or something like that, because I was glued to it. It was like, this is insane. What's happening? I gotta know.
Yeah.
I gotta know.
Yeah, I heard it was a pretty heady film or TV show.
Is. It definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's the German of it.
Yeah, no,
definitely not.
Yeah, I've heard the people who have watched it have really enjoyed it, but from the description I've heard from it, is like, I just don't know if I'm quite ready to get into that mindset.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say this. You gotta be in the right mindset, and you gotta be able to like suspend some belief, and you gotta be able to ask yourself some questions in it.
Yeah.
But on a fun note, I've been setting up my classroom, getting ready for the year, and I just put on a random Spotify. I wanted a specific song. I went to Memphis with Whitney and the Y earlier this summer, and so walking in Memphis has been in my head off and on throughout the summer, and I wanted it, and so I just like searched it up on Spotify, and it gave me this playlist called Piano Bar Classics. It's a solid listen. It's a solid listen for anyone who's just like kind of wanting something fun and easy, but has a mix of oldies and goodies and some more recent like piano centered songs.
Oh, good suggestion. I'm looking that up right now. I think I would enjoy that. So yeah, do you think All My Only Dreams is on that one?
Maybe not that one. Maybe not that
one. Yeah, I found it. I am saving it right now.
It's a good one.
Yeah, my recommendation is also on Netflix, and we're only 2 or 3 episodes in, but we started The Diplomat, which has been out for a little while, but it stars Kerry Russell. Basically, the synopsis: amid an international crisis, a career diplomat juggles her new high-profile job as ambassador to the UK and her turbulent marriage to a political star. So I didn't know much about this show, and I kind of, on the surface, I don't know why, I kind of thought it was maybe more actiony, and it's really not. It's actually more like political, kind of more talky type of thing. So nothing like The West Wing, but it's definitely about all these politics. And her husband, as I mentioned, is like a political star, and he's like quote unquote kind of retired, but he kind of goes rogue on a lot of things. So she's trying she's trying to make her name, but he kind of keeps getting in the way, but he thinks his way is helping her. Anyway, a lot of dynamics there, but a couple episodes in, and we're really enjoying it. So especially as I would say things start to get a little barren in the entertainment world with the writer's strike and the actor's strike. If you haven't watched it, so far we're enjoying it. I can't speak to how they stick to the landing, but that's a good one.
Yeah, I love political dramas. So, I watch West Wing, Madam Secretary, all that stuff. So I'll put it on my list.
I think you like it. It's pretty good. So, as always, check out moviesourlife.com for episode reviews and more. If you love this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it. This really helps us with finding new listeners. Katie, thanks again for doing this. I'm glad we found a movie that just fits you perfectly.
It's great. It's exactly who I am. My life story.
Yeah. Well, before we sign off, I gave a good Opa. Can you give a good Opa?
Sure. Opa.
Opa.